there are only two kinds of people. Those of you who are connected, either you have been hacked, your computers, your handheld devices, or laptops, and you know it. And then there are the rest of us who have been hacked, our handheld devices, whether it be laptops or desktops, but we don't know about it. And maybe months will go by before we even realize that we have lost our data, information that we've had collected for quite a while. It's gone. Of late, you've heard a lot about cybersecurity. No wonder, over the last 12 months, we've had hundreds and maybe thousands of attacks on our organizations across all industry segments, be it Target Corporation, UPS, Home Depot, JP Morgan Chase, banks, insurance companies, universities, colleges, or we as individuals. And we cannot forget our government as well, that houses our data and information. So it petrifies us. And we say to ourselves, oh my God, we have lost data and information. Why can't our government protect our data and information? Why can't our banks do the same thing? Why can't our educational institutions do that? The question before us is not how bad it is, because after all, this is the new terrain, the new realm of reality that we are working in. The question is how powerful cyberspace is. So let's go back in time and take a look at what has been happening for thousands of years. For better part of our human existence, trade, commerce, communications were all conducted on land, in an environment which was defined by boundaries. If you go back and look at the ancient Greeks, they really talked about border states that were confined within limitations of what they could see. And we said, aha, land is where we can transact, have our commerce and trade activities happen, we can communicate with people, and we can have a civic society where we could meet as a social group. And as that emerged, the ancient Egyptians said, what about the sea power? We know about the ocean, and they, along with the Vikings, envisioned and talked about and put in place sea lanes where they could travel to far-off lands and do the same thing, communicate, conduct trade and commerce, and have a civic engagement with larger group of people. In 1903, the Wright brothers envisioned the fact that they could fly across regions. And when they did that, 17 years later, what we had was emergence of KLM. The Royal Dutch Airlines was the first world airlines that was invented, put in place, and we started traveling by air. And then, of course, people said, let's go beyond that. In 1961, a Russian by the name of Yuri Gagarin was the first one to go into space. And by the way, since then, we've had over 500 men and women who've been in the Earth's orbit. And what we did was we discovered the power of space. And now, there's a new reality that has emerged before us. And we'll talk about that in a second. What happened in this realm was as we were going through this continuum, there was a lot of exciting and interesting things happening. In more recent times, at the turn of the last century, we had Henry Ford. In 1908, he displayed his Model T. Soon thereafter, he came up with the assembly line processing, and soon thereafter, he came up with a brilliant idea of having a 5-day work week. That had a dramatic impact on the socioeconomic and geopolitical complex that we know of today and take it for granted. From a society perspective, it took people across boundaries. It created a new norm. People came out of the villages and small towns and started earning monies. And wealth happened, and wealth creation happened. And over a period of time, we saw the emergence of the middle class. The nation became richer and stronger. There was also a geographical impact because now for the first time, along with the railroad systems and other innovation that had already taken place, because it's always a cumulative effect, it's not just one invention. And when that happened, people crossed boundaries and the nation got connected from coast to coast. Of course, 50 years later, the rollout of the infrastructure contributed to that. And then trade happened differently. Lee Iacocca came up with this idea of for $56 a month, you could own a car. It was 1956. And mass marketing happened, more wealth was created, and then the politics too got impacted. What we've seen over the last 100 years is a very significant impact on the socioeconomic and geopolitical complex. The same thing happened when the sea lanes were developed and flourished and became stronger, and the naval armadas were created, and we became, from a military perspective, stronger, but at the same time, trade and commerce was conducted as well. We could ship the raw material from one nation to another. We also saw people moving from one country to another, spending time, whether it be with their relatives or just doing sightseeing. That was different because it had not happened earlier on. It was difficult, it did, but it was very difficult for people to travel across major oceans. And then when the airplane was invented and matured, we could travel much faster. Raw materials could be transferred. Public could move from one area to another, from one region to another, actually around the world. It expanded the universe for us. And when the space was invented, we started discovering satellites and how we can make the life on Earth better. But today, we have entered a realm called cyber. And the cyberspace, when we talk about it, it really is a derivative of cybernetics. And it means, cyber means coming together of technology, computers, computer networks, and virtual reality. But when we see cyber from that perspective, it sounds limiting because it's a lot more than that. What about commerce and trade? What about communications, the inner thoughts, the inner feelings? So when we think in terms of universe, because it is large, it is beyond boundaries, it is expansive in nature, we say, what's the definition of universe? Universe basically conjures up thoughts of physical matter all over, seen or unseen, as well as space and time. It's beyond imagination. But when we combine cyber with universe, it is now totally different reality. It becomes technology being used in a much larger scale that is beyond imagination. It is invisible. It is boundaryless. It is all around us, everywhere. And we can communicate. We can conduct transactions. And we can, even on a large global basis, have civic engagement. We've seen several things happen in the last 10 years, 15 years, Steve Jobs came up with an idea, a very simple desire that he wanted to empower each and every person and give them the ability to communicate and live their lives and make them better. Lo and behold, what we have now is a handheld device which is far more powerful than the mainframe computers we had in 1990, just 25 years ago. Bill Gates thought about giving the computing power and said, why can't people, the workers, have more convenience, have the ability to do transactions and make their business processes better? And lo and behold, we had desktop computers. Mark Zuckerberg said, I'm having trouble with my social interaction. And he sat down and invented Facebook. We take that for granted. And today, through Facebook, with hundreds of millions of users, we can communicate all around the world. There's hardly a place where, because of the connectivity provided to all of us via internet, which is invisible, what we have today is the ability to communicate. And also through these technologies, have a mechanism where we can conduct business, trade, commerce. And guess what? Somebody thought of taking all those ideas and come up with something different and unique. And when they found out that there was a lot of tyranny and subjugation in a great nation like Egypt, they sent a little note. We call that the Twitter revolution. A handful of people sent a message saying that we don't have to put up with this. And if you are a freedom-loving individual, please come to the town square. And thousands of people showed up. And they showed up again and again in waves until a strong military-based government that had been in power for 30 years finally fell. And people said, aha, we have freedom at last. Power of Twitter, just sending messages to one individual and then having them send that message out to others. The power of communication, what kind of a geopolitical impact it has had. And not only in Egypt, but it went all around in the Middle Eastern area. We may be taking Twitter for granted. And there are many capabilities that are made available to us in what I call the cyber universe. The collection of cyber and universe is something where technology comes together with this vast universe that we know about and know of. And it makes our communications, our ability to conduct transactions and trade and commerce and interact with the people from a very civic engagement perspective, to learn from each other, possible. It is boundaryless. It is invisible. It is powerful. The question is, 25 years from now, what will it look like? We don't know. None of our major inventors at any of these stages over the last 100 years could have ever imagined where we are today. Forget that. They could have never imagined where the society would be 25 years later from where they were. Many were really inventors. They invented something new. A lot of them were innovators, where they put together inventions that were owned and were IPs of different people and put them together to create something different and new. Steve Jobs did that. He always claimed that he was not the original inventor, but he took the inventions of many people and rolled them, mashed them up together to create something different and new. In this realm, We know that it is powerful. And for all those of you who are 20-something, 25 years old, in 25 years, you will become the leaders of the world. 25% of our population is under the age of 25. Imagine this. It's the year 2040. With the aging of the population, you will be the leaders of the future. Who will be the president of the United States? We don't know, but one of us will be. One of you will be. One of you, or many of you, would be Supreme Court justices. You'll be political leaders. You'll be policy makers. You'll be educators. You'll be researchers. You'll be scientists. You'll be mathematicians. You will be inventing. You will be the leaders in whatever occupation you choose. Whether you're going to be a psychologist, a professor, an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, a corporate executive, you will all be leaders of tomorrow. So now imagine, if you're going to be there, are you going to be a leader by design or default? Think about it. We know today that 25-something, 25 plus, the millennial generation will be the leaders of tomorrow. The question before you is, are you going to be a leader by design or by default? What can you do today, realizing the reality and the power of cyber universe? What can you do today that will help you become what you want to be and have an impact on the world as we know it? The universe really is in you, and you are in the universe. So, ladies and gentlemen, young 20-something, you are the future leaders of the world. Do what you need to do today to be there. Thank you.